Hello folks, welcome to this episode of Draw and Talk. Today's episode will be coming in two parts. In the first part, I'm going to be talking a little bit about body image, and then in the second part I'm going to be talking about 5 cool space related things. And I promise that they have some sort of relation to each other that I'm gonna sort of show you. I'm also gonna be drawing a Rocket Raccoon, who I think is a very relatable character because he's small and tiny and cute, but he can also bite your face off, which I think is a very relatable trait in a character. Never drawn him before, but we'll see how it goes. Just a reminder to check out the Discord. It's pretty cozy right now with 3 Discord users, including me and Kyle. So just give it a check out. Like, it's not supposed to be a sort of weird thing. It's mostly just a place you can go and talk about animals. That's what I've got going on right now. I'm not sure what I'm doing with his eyebrows. I don't think the eyebrows were a good place to start, so let's try this again. I'll start with the ears, because I love drawing the ears. So, today's episode, I decided to call it We Are Star Stuff, and that's based off of a quote by Carl Sagan. Because I was just thinking about how space makes me feel a lot better about a lot of things. I know space makes some people feel like an existential terror, but I feel like an existential sort of happiness almost. Most of the time. Because it makes me feel like I'm a part of something greater. But I've been really struggling with body image related stuff lately. In particular, just like, well, where do I even start? Because being trans is like already really hard when you have gender dysphoria. It's really hard to just love yourself and love your body and care about your body and all that kind of stuff. And I've got my appointment, my gender therapist appointment, very soon. It's on Monday. One thing that I wanted to address is why I'm not doing an episode about men's issues like I said I would last week. I think even last week I was like, I might not end up doing that. Well, it's because I think that episode's gonna require a lot of research. Because I don't want to just put something out that I'm just going off from the top of my head. I have some good ideas, but I really want to research it. And actually, when I was looking up some stuff for like the body image portion of this episode, I found some cool books that I can look at. And I found, like, on Wikipedia I saw this assertion, and it linked it back to this book. It says that, like, the obsession with, like, a muscular body image for a man, it says that's a recent obsession. Which really kind of blew my mind. I don't know if it's true. That's what I want to go and look at and find out if that's a recent thing. So I do wonder if it's a recent thing, and if it's recent, like how recent are we talking? If we go back to like the 20th century, would it be around then? because like I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about like movies, because in every movie where there's like a white dude protagonist, he's like usually super muscular. But then I think of old films that had a guy protagonist, and I think of like, it conjures up an image in my mind of like a skinny dude in a suit. Like that would be the movie stars back then. And I'm wondering like how much truth is there to that. So that's one thing I really want to explore in the men's issues episode, and I just wonder if it's true, and I wanted to bring it up here because it has a tangential relation to body image. I've been really struggling these past few weeks with body image related stuff. Now, I've always struggled with dysphoria, but actual like non-dysphoria sort of worry and insecurity about my body, that's been like on and off. And the line between, oh shit, I've been drawing on the sketch layer. Okay, it's rare that you get to catch this live, folks, so feel lucky. Oh man. It's just a disaster. I'm gonna catch back up to where I was drawn, and then I'll come back. Okay, and we're back. I think that goes to show, no matter how experienced of an artist you are, you can always make a mistake like drawing on the sketch layer. It's very common. Shit, that's a sketch layer again. Alright, I'm just gonna put it in a folder and call this one sketch layer so I don't forget. And usually what I do to prevent this is like I put like a little folder in between where I'm doing the line art, and below that there's a folder, and then there's a sketch layer, or the sketch layer is inside the folder. I do that because one thing I do a lot when I'm doing the line art is I like merge one layer with another layer so it's all one cohesive layer, because some line art effects you need to do it on two separate layers to make it clean. But I didn't do that today for some reason. I think draw and talk is a bit of a workout for my brain because it is multitasking. Even though I'm really attuned to doing these kinds of drawings, it's still taking up some brain power to have to do this, you know? And it does mean I'm more likely to make mistakes like that, so that's the kind of stuff I need to look out for. But back to body image. One interesting thing that happened when I got the call from the gender therapist saying, hey, you're finally getting your appointment, I started to doubt myself because I'd been waiting. Well, I didn't get a call, it was a letter, and then I called them, but I digress. Same difference. I started to doubt myself. I started to think, you're faking this. And I think the reason why is because I'd been waiting for that letter for 2 years, and I've been experiencing some of the worst gender dysphoria of my life. In a lot of emotional pain about it. And then, as soon as I got that letter, it was like instant relief. Of course it was, because it's like, hey, your problems, the solution is here very soon. you're gonna be able to transition, and you're gonna be able to feel good, and you're gonna be able to feel happy. So if you think about it that way, of course my gender dysphoria is going to be a little bit relieved. Just the idea that I'm actually going to get some help about it. So I started to think like, oh, I'm just faking. And I think another big contributing factor to that is just the fact, like, my gender therapist appointment is going to be 2 hours long, and during that 2 hours I'm going to have to relay to them what my gender dysphoria is like and why I need to transition, which is quite an archaic system. I much rather we had an informed consent model. And what an informed consent model is basically you go in, they tell you what testosterone or top surgery or whatever is going to do to your body, and you sit there, you listen to them, you consent to doing that, you say that's what you really genuinely want to do. And it's very strange because we kind of have, I'm not sure you can call it that, but like we kind of have an informed consent model for like identifying, like your gender marker on your birth certificate in Ireland. You don't need to medically transition, you don't need any sort of diagnosis, you don't need anything. You can just go in and say, basically fill out this form that says, yes, this is the gender that I want to live as, and there you go. But for some reason, in order to medically transition, you have to do it the old-fashioned way. And like talk to a psychiatrist and get them to say, yeah, this one's trans. Which is just not good, and it's the reason why it's taken so long. Because every single trans person that wants to transition in Ireland has to get assessed by someone, and that someone has to say, yeah, you're trans, and send them on through. And I think, like, knowing that I'm going to transition now, because although, like, I was obviously on the waiting list, and I knew that at some point I was going to transition, but I didn't know when. Like, I thought it was going to be, at the soonest, I thought it was going to be next year again I get to see someone, and that was, in my mind, that was, like, really optimistic. So, I'm kind of gobsmacked, honestly. I still can't really believe it. But, so, this happening kind of led me to focus on things that surgery and testosterone and all that can't change. So I went back to focusing a lot on my body, like the shape of my body and stuff. And I've been having some very strange dysphoria these past few weeks. Very strange and very kind of upsetting dysphoria. And I think it's just going to be a phase I'm going to have to go through. I think I'm going to grow out of it. I think I'm going to feel happy and comfortable sometime. But, like, I'm worried. I'm like, here's one of the first body dysphoria things I ever experienced. Obviously, I didn't know what it was at the time. But the first kind of like actual body dysphoria that I've experienced that I remember was I was looking in the mirror one day and I noticed like I've got this huge like curve in my back, and it didn't feel right to me. And what happens is some like assigned female at birth people have like, I think it's called pelvic tilt. And I'm not sure if it's like just assigned female at birth people that have it. I don't think it is, but I think it might be more common in us. So that was really distressing to me. I felt wrong when I was looking at that. I absolutely felt so wrong for the first time, looking in that mirror and seeing that, and seeing my body that way for the first time was very hard. But over the years, like, I've started to understand my dysphoria more, and more focusing on those kinds of aspects of it, like the stuff that testosterone and top surgery could change. But there's not really, I don't think there's really a surgery to correct the way your spine is, you know. I think working out and like really working your core muscles can help with it a bit. So I try and focus on my core muscles when I do work out. But even working out is hard for me because I don't like thinking about my body, and if I exercise a lot, then I'm thinking about my body a lot. And that can kind of put me in the danger zone. So it's a double-edged sword, really. And speaking of like exercise and all, and diet and stuff like that, another thing that has happened to me over the course of lockdown is that I've gotten stretch marks. I've gotten stretch marks on my thighs, and I feel just awful about it. I feel absolutely atrocious about it. And the weird part is that I'm actually in a healthy weight. I weighed myself, I looked my weight up, I'm a healthy weight for someone my size. I'm not overweight, I'm not underweight, I'm fine. But I still have stretch marks. And that's very strange to me. Like, I'm not saying I eat healthy all the time. I want to eat healthy all the time. But with dysphoria and, like, the emotional distress it was causing me, and just, like, there's a freaking pandemic going on and you're stuck inside and you can't exercise as much. Like, I was eating pretty unhealthily. Sometimes. A lot of the times. Because I started, like, at some points I was kind of using food as a way to cope with feelings of emotional distress. And I think a lot of people that have struggled with their body in some way can maybe relate to that. Like, they use food as kind of an escape from their feelings, and then eating unhealthy food just makes it worse because they start to see the effect it has on their body. So I never really noticed myself getting fatter per se, but I did notice that I got stretch marks on my thighs, and it has intensified my gender dysphoria a lot, because I used to think like, oh yeah, like, I am dysphoric, but at least my legs are fine, you know? It's nothing to feel dysphoric about them there, and now it's just like, bam, you have stretch marks. And of course, stretch marks aren't like a woman-only thing or something, of course not. But whenever there's something with my body to feel insecure about, I'm gonna find, like, my brain's gonna find a way to make it as upsetting as possible for me. That's just the way of it, unfortunately. Okay, if we're gonna draw this collar, look, here's some of my reference images. There we go. So that's one of my body image struggles. Another body image struggle that I've kind of overcome was I got one of my back teeth out, which doesn't sound like a big thing, but it was a big thing to me, because I started thinking like you don't think it's going to be a big deal to get a tooth out, but for someone like me who's 24, but for a lot of intents and purposes does not feel like a mature human adult, because, you know, like, without my transition, I don't feel like I can actually have the capacity to be a mature human adult all the time. So, and many people see losing the two as like the first sign of aging. So it felt, so losing that too, to me, was kind of like, dear God, I'm like getting old and I'm gonna die and I'm not able to do the things that make me happy, because a lot of the hobbies I have, like, they're stereotypically like enjoyed by younger people, like skateboarding, for example. I'm often like, oh man, I can't skateboard because I should have done it when I was a teenager. Why didn't I do it when I was a teenager? Well, when I was a teenager, I just didn't have the wherewithal to know that was something I would enjoy, I would like. But then I got that 2 out, and I was obsessed with this missing 2 for months and months. I was obsessed that I had one of my back 2 out that you can't even see. Like, you can't even see unless you're looking for it when I'm smiling or whatever. You can't see that I've got another 2 out. But I was obsessed with it, and I was thinking, I'm unattractive, I'm ugly, I'm this, I'm that. It's hard. It intersects, for me, my body image issues intersect a lot with just being trans. I think another thing is, like, that I was thinking about is, like, ever since I started presenting more masculine, like, people, like, don't really compliment you as much. Like, obviously, like, my boyfriend, he says nice things to me all the time, so that's good, but, like, when I would present feminine, dress feminine, people would be like saying, oh, you look gorgeous, you look lovely, and all that. But then you start dressing masculine, and people are kind of just like, you're there. Not all the time. Of course, like, being a bit hyperbolic. Loads of people gave me compliments when I started cutting my own hair, which is another thing. I have to cut my hair by myself. Also, like, I don't really want people saying stuff to me like, oh, you're gorgeous, you're beautiful, and all that kind of stuff. But it's weird to go from being called that to, like, just being kind of not that. It makes you wonder if you're, like, ugly or whatever. Another thing I was thinking about is, like, I will literally never be what society sees, modern society sees as, like, the ideal male body. I will literally just never have that. You know, I'm never gonna be tall. You know, maybe I could have more muscles, but I really doubt I could have, like, or I don't even want to have, like, crazy superstar sort of muscles. I don't have, like, I just don't have the proportions. I got hips, I got that curve in my back situation going on. I have small hands. Just a lot of ways that I'm just not what society sees as what is, like, an attractive man, which is odd because it's like there's so many different types of men that deserve that sort of representation. Which kind of leads me back to Rocket Raccoon. Like, he's a small, little, terrifying mass of fur, and I love him. Oh, and also, like, an Easter egg, not really an Easter egg because I'm telling you it, the gun he's holding is the Rhino from the first Ratchet and Clank game. I thought that would be cute since Rocket and Ratchet kind of have a similar thing going on, like, both sort of last of the race, furry small dude that likes guns and travels around space. You know, they both got that going on. So what can we do when we are struggling with our body image? What what actionable things can we do? I think realizing that society is quite fallible and what they see as the most attractive, good body type is very important. Because everyone has a different taste, you know? And like other people's preferences, you know? Other people's rejection of you, it says more about them than it says about you. And I know that's like a cliche that loads of people like throw around a lot, but it really actually truly helped my self-esteem when I was able to internalize that for what it actually means. And I think what it actually means, how would I explain it? Is like that person has some sort of like bias in their brain that makes them want a certain type of person or makes them judge or look down. Like I think this applies to people who reject you, but also applies to people who like are mean to you. Like they have a certain view of you and that's not your fault. You aren't responsible for the circumstances in their life that led them to seeing someone like you that way. For example, like loads of people are like, oh, I hate men are terrible, whatever. And what you do is you kind of have, what makes me deal with that a bit more is if you have sympathy, if you have empathy, and say this person was probably hurt by men, like a man or a lot of men, that makes them feel the need to say this. So I shouldn't be personally upset by that. It is not my fault that they might see me in a bad way because of an experience they've had in their life. And so I shouldn't take it personally. And especially when you can recognize these patterns in yourself, it gets a lot easier. So if there's a certain group of people that you feel uncomfortable around, or maybe you even feel like saying bad things about, just because they make you feel uncomfortable, then you can sort of have that empathy for people who do the same for like a group of people that you're in. And this can apply to body image a lot. I think it applies a bit more to being trans and people saying bad things about trans people. There's a lot of people that say bad things about trans men, for example, that I've had to sort of overcome and sort of had to distance myself from. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, a trans man will never satisfy me, will never make me feel good, I never want to date one. I don't think it's really right for people to be saying stuff like that in a public forum. I think we're a marginalised group of people and it's very psychologically difficult for a lot of us to deal with that kind of thing and for us to have that kind of stigma. But again, it's still happening, so how do we deal with it? We just say it's more about them than it is about me. It's more about whatever experience or view they have of trans men than it is about trans men. I'm really happy with how Rocket's coming out. He looks awesome. Diet and exercise are really important, not just for physical health but for mental health. So like I'd always recommend people try and have their best to have a good diet and get some exercise in as well. But it can get quite toxic if you just focus on losing weight, for example. It can get very toxic very fast because there's a lot of ways to lose weight that aren't good for your body. there's a lot of ways to exercise that aren't good for your body as well, like some people pushing their bodies to an extreme because they want this perfect sort of muscular body. It's just not on. So I've kind of went into some men's issues kind of stuff here, but like this really applies to everyone. There's a lot of, and feminism and feminists talk about that all the time, which is awesome. But I feel like men are more like quiet about it, and they don't want to talk about it as much, and they don't want to admit that there's a problem sometimes, which is quite hard because then it's kind of just suffering in silence and feeling alone. So I've been having like these upsetting thoughts, like I have stretch marks, my head's too small, I'm not muscular enough, I'm not big enough, I'm not masculine enough because of that. And I haven't quite overcome them, to be honest. Like, they've actually stopped me from like going outside and doing what I want to do. But talking about it, I hope, is the first step to recovery. I hope it makes me feel a little bit better after I've finished recording this episode, to know I've talked about it and I've gotten it off my chest, so to speak. So if you want to talk about like some issues you're dealing with, feel free to like talk about it in the comments. You can come to the Discord server. Like, if we're friends, you can talk to me. I'm always happy to listen about this kind of stuff because it's so very hard to deal with. I think a lot of the things that I'm worried about, like the curve in my back, my head's too small, whatever, like I think a lot of those aren't actually true, like, or greatly exaggerated, which is like kind of what a lot of dysmorphia is all about. Like, whatever process happens, like, you greatly exaggerate what you see as a flaw with your body. And it can help to have a friend say, hey, that's not actually what's going on. Actually, that curve in your back isn't noticeable. Your head's not too small. You look fine. And you might not believe them the first time they say that, but if you keep hearing them say that, then maybe you can start to reassure yourself. And you don't want to become reliant on that either. You want to use that as a jumping off point to start to look in the mirror and start seeing what's actually there, instead of just seeing something that's flawed. And that's what's really helped me, like, whenever I'm starting to struggle with body image issues, I tell my boyfriend about it. He usually has reassuring things to say to me. Another thing I've been struggling with is like finding clothes sizes that actually fit me. I could find a shirt that will fit like my upper body, but then it's gonna like stretch down like past my hips and all that, because it's simply just made for a taller person. They had a taller person in mind when they were designing it. It's a problem with a lot of men's clothes. There's a very few men's shirts that I have that actually like just perfectly fit me. I think a lot of people have that kind of problem. But yeah, the idea of this episode was to talk about how we are made of star stuff. How we are a part of the universe, as much a part of the universe as the trees and the sun and the moon. And how the chemical components of our bodies were forged in billions of years old decaying stars. And that's just the truth. I mean, like, so much of the chemicals in our bodies were originated that way. So when Carl Sagan says we are star stuff, I think he really means it. And that helps me feel a little bit better about my body and my place in the universe. And I love curiosity. I love humankind's curiosity. It gives me a lot of hope for our future. If we keep that curiosity and we keep exploring the stars, and we let curiosity rather than wealth or power drive us, then I think humankind can overcome a lot of the problems we're facing. It gives me a lot of hope to think about the universe, to think that humans put someone on the moon, to think that we could put someone on Mars, to think we have probes, Voyager, in the outer solar system, miles and miles away. To think we've reached so far and so little, and just have so much we could explore and so much we don't know. That makes me feel happy to be human in a way, to be alive and be, because we are the universe observing itself. We are the universe experiencing itself. Without us, without life forms, living beings, there is no one to experience and appreciate the universe. And just that, just like eating a pizza and just enjoying the taste, like, just that should be like enough. And I think human beings, we often forget that we're just on this floating rock going through the Milky Way, and how amazing it is that we're even here. And that just helps me with my depression a lot. It really does. Like, I think a lot of people don't like thinking about the universe because they think like, oh, it's cold and it's vast and we'll never get to visit all of it. But it's not really like that. The universe is an amazing place. And we're a part of the universe. Even if we only get to see a very small part of it, we're still a part of the larger, huge universe that we live in. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish the line art, and when I come back to colour, I'm going to be telling you about 5 cool space things that I've looked up and I've researched. Just because I thought it might be interesting for you to see the line art and the colouring process, because since I'm jumping around a bit more, like, you might not get to see that. So I'll come back, you get to see, if you're watching, you might just be listening, you get to see me colouring this Rocket Raccoon in. I'm going to tell you about 5 cool space facts. Or things. And hopefully that sort of inspires the same sense of awe and wonder and curiosity and lust for life that it inspires in me. Or, maybe you'll just think they're cool, which is also valid. Well, first, alright, I'm going to talk about 5 cool space things. I just want to remind you that I'm not a scientist. I'm just a nerd. So I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I did a lot of research, and hopefully most of what I say I get right. Okay, well, first of what I want to talk about that really fascinates me is tachyons. Now, tachyons are a hypothetical particle that would always travel faster than the speed of light. They would increase in speed as their energy decreases and would require infinite energy to slow down to the speed of light. Because they are traveling faster than light speed, it would not be possible to see a tachyon approaching, so when it approaches and goes away, you see two images, one of it approaching, one departing, because that's when the light is reaching your eyes. And an object made of tachyons would be called a superluminal object. There is no evidence that tachyons actually exist. And just for comparison, the speed of light is almost 300 million meters a second. So I've always been really fascinated by the concept of light speed travel, superluminal communication, and all that. I just think it's really fascinating because if we could crack that, if humankind could go ahead and crack that, it's like a lot of the universe is at our disposal. But many scientists say it's not actually physically. Okay, and the next thing I want to talk about is phosphine on Venus. You might have heard of this, it was quite big in the news. But it's still ongoing. It's still, from what I've looked up, it's still ongoing. It's still inconclusive of whether they actually found phosphine. So, in late 2020, scientists studying the atmosphere of Venus announced the controversial discovery of phosphine in the atmosphere. On Earth, phosphine is primarily produced by living organisms. The results point towards the possible presence of microorganisms on Venus. However, soon after this, other scientists started casting doubt on the results. One study which sought to comprehensively reinterpret the results, the original study, said that phosphine might have actually been sulfur dioxide. And by the way, you can look in the description. I've put in links to where I found a lot of this information if you want to read more. However, there was another study. It reanalyzed the results from the Pioneer Venus mission. Okay? And that was in 1978. This mission had 4 probes being plunged into Venus's atmosphere, collecting data as they traveled to the surface. The scientists found that the original study only checked for common chemicals in Venus's atmosphere and neglected to check for stuff like phosphine. So they re-examined the results. They found evidence of phosphine, but they also found hydrogen sulfide, nitrous acid, nitrate, nitric acid, nitrate, hydrogen cyanide, and even possibly ammonia. According to the scientists, this is suggestive of something called, and forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce this, redox disequilibria. And that is something that is suggestive of life. These old re-examined results are especially important because they were observed directly on Venus instead of with Earth-based telescopes. And of course, Earth-based telescopes is what gave us the original detection of phosphine. Now, we can't talk about Venus without talking about how truly inhospitable to life as we know it. So we got temperatures of 450 degrees Celsius, an extremely acidic atmosphere, right? There's a reason why people call it Hell World, but if you ask me, I don't think this rules out hope for microbial life, because on Earth we have what are called extremophiles, microbial life forms that thrive in conditions usually considered inhospitable for carbon-based life, like ourselves. For an example of one of these life forms I found, it's called Bacillus. It's a type of bacteria with 266 named species, and some of the species can occur in high temperature, high pH, high salt environments, so really extreme environments inhospitable to life. But this bacteria is found in them, which I think is really cool. Okay, and the next thing I want to talk about is the possibility of life on Mars. Now, it's interesting because Mars is always the one that we think of when we think of the possibility of a planet in our solar system containing life. We think of Mars. So I want to talk about that for a bit. I want to talk about the latest developments of that. So Perseverance is the newest of the Mars rovers. I've always loved the Mars rovers, Spirit, Opportunity, Curiosity. I love them. I could do a whole episode just about them. Do a whole episode about most of these. Except maybe Tachyons. I feel like to go into that I'd need to do a lot of maths that I'm not very confident about. So Perseverance, it was launched in July of 2020 and received confirmation of its safe landing on Mars on February 18th, 2021. Now, interestingly enough, one of the rover's goals is finding evidence of ancient microbial life on Mars. The rover's landing spot was the Jezero crater, which some scientists believe was once a large body of water. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So much stuff here I don't know how to pronounce. Please correct me. I want to be right. The rover will analyze what type of rocks reside in Jezero. Sedimentary rock, for example, which is formed as minerals or organic matter accumulate over time. Sedimentary rock would point to life. Now, the rover is also going to take samples of Martian soil, which will be collected and safely returned to Earth for analysis during a future mission. So a future mission, they'll go to Mars, collect the samples. Well, here's where it gets interesting. Have we already found evidence of microbial life on Mars? It's a possibility, alright? So, Viking. The two Viking landers carried out biological experiments on Mars in 1976. So this was the controversial labeled release experiment, and that had the most promising results of all the experiments. The experiment tested for life by mixing small samples of Martian soil with drops of water containing nutrient solution and some radioactive solution. It was then tested if radioactive carbon was released from the sample, which would have been indicative of microorganisms metabolizing the nutrients. Multiple samples were tested, and some of them had positive results for life. But many scientists dismissed the results, pointing to explanations other than the presence of life. But it's never been conclusively debunked. So these two scientists, Gilbert V. Levin and Patricia Ann Stratt, hope I'm saying that right, insist to this day about the presence of life in these samples. They even wrote a peer-reviewed paper about it in 2012. Check it out, I put it in the description if you want to read more about this. So, I think the biggest thing is that a similar test has not been performed since. So, Perseverance has given me hope that there will be another test, because they're saying that they're getting Martian soil, they're bringing it back to Earth, they're going to test it. Are they going to do another labeled release experiment? I really hope so, because we really need a repeat of that experiment. It's just amazing. It's amazing the results they found. Maybe they'll find another explanation. Lots of scientists say, like, oh, it wasn't actually life, it was this, that, or the other. But either way, I bet it's really interesting what is causing that positive result. So if you're looking, you can kind of see that I'm going for a little bit of a comic book sort of style with colour in this. I'm really happy how the shading is kind of coming out on that front. Looks different, but it looks nice, and I'm kind of taking inspiration from like the art of the Rocket Raccoon comic books, which are excellent, by the way. I really enjoy them. I think they're cancelled now, though. I think they're doing Rocket Raccoon and Groot instead. Okay, and this next one is gonna be another trip in pronunciation for me. It's called Ayumama. Alright, and what Ayumama is, it's the first known interstellar object to travel across the solar system. You might have heard this in the news as well. So, observations of Ayumama showed that it was thin, it was long, and it was accelerating. It was also highly reflective. There are a number of different theories about what exactly Ayumama is. Some of them are tame, and some of them are definitely a bit more out there. So, what I wanted to talk about first is I just wanted to maybe have a go at one of the more out there ones. So, one of the biggest proponents of this, that Ayumama is actually a piece of alien technology, is Avi Loeb. He's a Harvard astronomer, or ex-Harvard astronomer, I should say. I think he's moved out of that. He's got his own agenda, though. Like, if you read what he's saying in the news, he's saying Ayumama is technology stuff, alien technology. But he's also saying, "Oh, I want to fix this about science," and I think he's kind of using like the press attention as a platform to say his opinions about the way the scientific community is right now. But what he said is that Ayumama's anomalous acceleration could be explained if it was in fact a light sail, which is a method of spacecraft propulsion that uses the radiation pressure exerted by sunlight on large mirrors that are attached to the spacecraft, the solar sail. So that would explain Ayumama's unusual reflectiveness. The behavior in Ayumama would usually be explained by it being a comet, and comet outgassing occurring, creating a comet tail, and the comet tail can act as a thruster and cause the acceleration. What makes Ayumama strange is that this outgassing was never observed, so we still don't know if it's a comet, an asteroid, or maybe a freaking alien ship. So it's a mystery. However, I think it being alien stuff is quite remote. I mean, I think even SETI had it pointed in that direction and listened to it, and they didn't hear anything. So it's more than likely just a really strange object. A strange object from another solar system. So there's other explanations for why Ayumama is the strange way it is. Now, some scientists suggest that it's a frozen piece of dwarf exoplanet. You know, like Pluto. They suggested that Ayumama is composed of nitrogen ice, and its reflectivity would be similar to that of which is observed on the surface of Pluto, also composed of nitrogen ice. So that's what some scientists are saying Ayumama is. So here is the finished drawing, and I'm gonna leave you out by talking a bit about Planet 9. And by Planet 9, I'm unfortunately not talking about Pluto, which has been declassified into being a dwarf planet. Very tragic loss. But anyways, Planet 9, the real Planet 9, or the fake, or the hypothetical Planet 9, it's hypothesized to exist due to the strange clustering of the orbits of a group of what's called extreme trans-Neptunian objects, or ETNOs. The orbits of these objects just can't be explained by the solar system as we know it. And as years have passed, we've detected more of these extreme trans-Neptunian objects. So today we know about 19 of them. So scientists are still looking for the elusive Planet 9, which is likely to be very far away and very dim. Some scientists say that Planet 9 is likely to not exist, and that observation bias is what explains the clustering of these extreme trans-Neptunian objects. So they're like, well, you're only observing at this time, so you might have missed some other extreme trans-Neptunian objects at another time, and they might not be as anomalous as it appears. But what's also really cool is that some people say that Planet 9 could be a small black hole if it exists, like a tiny baby black hole, which would explain why it is impossible to observe. If it's a black hole, it's going to be very, very hard to detect, because you don't detect a black hole itself, you detect what the black hole is doing to stuff around it. So I guess that tiny black hole would have to start eating Pluto or something for us to even know it's there, which I guess I'd rather it not eat Pluto. So I hope you like the Rocket Raccoon I've drawn. I've been trying something different this episode. I'm sorry. I apologise that there's not a lot of actual drawing, especially near the end. I wouldn't be able to talk about this space stuff off the top of my head. I really need my notes to talk about it. And I was just struggling to concentrate today for some reason, and especially when I was talking about body image a bit. Like, I feel like I've hit my stride now, but I can't go back and re-record what I've said about body image. So I hope that was coherent. So what I'm trying to do is, like, instead of me drawing for things that I need to look at my notes for, I'm gonna put up like lots of little pictures on the screen, just overlay them. It's a lot more editing than some of the older episodes, but I really do want people to be able to watch it if that's what they want. It is a podcast, it's something you're supposed to listen to in the background, but I do want people, if they look back at the video, that there's something going on. 9 out of 10 times. Anyways, thanks for watching. Please engage with the video. It means a lot. I just want Draw and Talk to reach more people that would enjoy it. Join the Discord if that suits your fancy. Check out DeviantArt, link in the description. Follow that, whatever. You know, and if you got a friend that you think would enjoy this type of content, just share it with them. You know, I just want people to enjoy what I'm making here. That's really the only purpose I have with Draw and Talk. It's not for really anything else. So, thank you very much for watching, and have a pleasant evening.